Maybe the most powerful woman ever. You had Dr. Terrence Hayes, you know, a Genius Award winner, MacArthur Genius Award winner, and you had our mayor, you had Bill Strickland. Now you get tired, old, decrepit Lebanese woman. I'm intimidated by that. Then Nathan told me what the topic is, and this is what the topic says, how the topic is defined on the Creative Mornings website. We navigate the muddy waters of ethics every day. They're present in every form. The values we define for our identities, to how we interact with clients, to the principles of engaging with other creative work on the internet. How have ethics, particularly in the creative world, evolved since their philosophical conception? Why do we create those codes of ethics in the first place? And when should we examine what dictates our conscience and what really makes up a solid moral value system anyway? I'm not talking about this. Because oftentimes we turn ethics into this very kind of philosophical, theoretical, academic subject, when for me it is all about relationships. So one more click gets us there. So ethics for me, if we can't bring it down to the level of how I deal with you, you deal with me, how we deal with each other, how we make decisions at the public policy level, when we determine that we're going to carpet bomb the hell out of whole nations or build walls to keep others from coming into our world, you know, though it's about the relational day-to-day decisions that you and I make, or policymakers deal with on a much larger level than yours or mine. In 2009, our president, President Obama, hosted the G20 summit here in Pittsburgh. Were any of you in Pittsburgh then? A lot of you were in Pittsburgh then. I personally loved the fact that our president chose Pittsburgh as the host city for the G20 summit. And so the leaders of the 20 largest economies of the world were here meeting with our president, and then our first lady, Mrs. Obama, hosted the first spouses, some first ladies, some first dudes, and hosted them while they were here. So while the leaders were meeting at the convention center, Mrs. Obama hosted the first spouses and took them around Pittsburgh and showed them different things that are of importance to her. And one place she took them was one of our schools in Pittsburgh Public Schools. I work for the Pittsburgh Promise. I don't work for Pittsburgh Public Schools, but we work very closely with each other, and we at the Promise exist to serve our urban public school system. So she wanted to host the spouses of the leaders of the 20 largest economies in the world. She wanted to host them in one of our public school buildings, and she picked the school building that is immediately adjacent to the convention center, which is CAPA, the Creative and Performing Arts Academy. Great place. Now, when I was not invited. My full name, did I tell you, is Saleem Asad Khalil Marcus Ghubril. They don't want a guy with a name like mine anywhere near the leaders of the free world. I understand. I fully understand. But I really wanted to be there. I begged, I pleaded, I bribed, I cajoled, I groveled, I did everything that I possibly could to get an invitation to be. I just wanted to be in the room. And I was told no a dozen times. And finally I said, well, what if you gave me a job? What if there was a function for me to serve when they were in the building, and you can clear me and put me through whatever clearance? I just wanted to be in the building. So they gave me a job. And the job was to be the doorman. So I literally was at the front door, and I opened and I closed the doors for the, and I loved it. It was an honor to be the doorkeeper for the spouses of the leaders of the world. So there I was that morning, and I went through multiple clearances. Yeah. Some were just humiliating. So now it's the morning of the event. I'm at the front door of Kappa. And first spouse after first spouse came into the building. And then the last two to come in together were our First Lady, Mrs. Obama, and the then French First Lady, Mrs. Sarkozy. So the two of them walked up and I opened the door. And Mrs. Obama, they told me I could not talk to them, I could not reach my hand out, I would pick a hug. But Mrs. Obama and I, we made eye contact. We did. And I'm told, I don't want to brag, but I'm told that she has not stopped thinking about that moment. So I opened the door for them. She came in, and then they did a tour. We had 250 kids in the building. The kids performed for them, and they were just brilliant. But then and then we had everybody in the auditorium. Mrs. Obama invited 3 professional artists to perform for her guests that day, and she invited. When I mention names, go ahead and applaud if you are a fan of that artist. Trisha Yearwood. Sarah Bareilles. Okay, we doubled from 2 to 4. And a hip-hop artist by the name of Yo-Yo Ma. So Trisha Yearwood, Sarah Bareilles, and Yo-Yo Ma were the performers that day. Mrs. Obama gave a speech. She invited one after the other to perform, and they were terrific. Now the spouses were getting ready to leave, they and their entourages, and in order to prevent mayhem from happening, we released them, the leaders, first, and then we kept the kids in the auditorium, and then we asked the artists if they would just get up on stage and do a Q&A with our students. So here we have 250 young, aspiring artists with an opportunity to talk to folks who are doing it professionally and quite successfully. So they asked them a bunch of questions, and they were great questions. The last question, however, was for me the best of them. And the last question was, again, a young artist asking older artists about this. So the last question was, tell us please about an embarrassing moment that you had on stage. So Sarah Bareilles talked about her potty mouth moment, or this was her line. She called it her potty mouth moment, where she was performing in a high school gym, and then she kind of forgot that she was performing for high school kids, and her language was entirely inappropriate for a public school setting with high school kids. So that was her most embarrassing moment on stage. And then Trisha Yearwood talked about a show that she had in London, and it was a packed house. She got up to sing. She sang her first song, and then she lost her voice after the first song, gave everybody a rain check, came back a year later, same audience, same venue, sang the first song, and lost her voice again after the first song, only to discover that she was allergic to some of the fabric in that auditorium. So, fine answers, but then Yo-Yo Ma came up and answered that question. And the embarrassing moment that he cited was this. He said that while I've had embarrassing moments like Sarah's and like Trisha's, I wouldn't call those among my most embarrassing. My most embarrassing moments, and he pluralized them, my most embarrassing moments are the times when I'm up on stage and I forget why I'm there. I forget why I'm on stage. Now, he didn't say I forgot how to play the cello, how to read music, how to play with an orchestra, but why I am on stage. It's a purpose kind of statement. Why am I on stage? Literally right now. But why am I on stage every day when I'm performing my job, when I'm relating to my family, when I'm dealing with my neighbors, when I am challenging certain decision makers, when I'm talking to a group of amazing men and women? Why am I on stage? Why are you on stage on any moment on any given day? The question is a question about purpose. And to me, kind of like the ethical choices that we have to make are choices that have to do with how am I going to perform what I am supposed to perform, when I'm supposed to perform it, to the best of my ability in ways that end up ethically, positively, fully impacting the world around me. And I'm going to suggest, for me at least, and you may accept or you may reject these things. I'm going to tell you why I am on stage. And I get my marching orders today from a Hebrew writer who wrote about 2,700 years ago by the name of Micah. And Micah said, I am on stage to act justly. So, acting justly. I struggle with the fact that my life includes acts of injustice, not because I desire for my life to include acts that are unjust or choices that are unjust, but because I allow myself to fall prey to a system that has built-in injustices to it. And by the way, so do you. I struggle with the fact that some of us get to eat 3 meals a day before every one of us gets to eat 1 meal a day. I struggle with the fact that some of us own 2 houses before every one of us has had a chance to own 1. I struggle with the fact that some of us have the opportunity to go to exceptional public school systems that prepare them well for prosperous futures and lives of service, and others of us don't have that opportunity. I struggle with the fact that because I have a decent job that pays me well, and because of certain connections, I can call on a doctor or a dentist or a chiropractor or a therapist anytime I want to and not have to worry about how to pay for that, while others don't. Acting justly, for me, has to deal with this kind of very basic human premise that every human being deserves to be treated, must be treated with the utmost respect and with diligent commitment to the preservation of their dignity. So acting justly requires active, conscious, careful, intentional, deliberate thinking about the choices, the simple choices that we make, how we spend our time, how we spend our money, how we invest in our relationships, how we share our networks in ways that could possibly end up impacting the world around us positively and bringing healing to wounds that exist all over the place. Acting justly. The second one is love mercy. So this to me has kind of a basic foundational assumption. I have to love mercy because I need mercy. I have to love mercy because I need you to be patient with me. Because I aspire to things that are much greater than my ability to deliver. And so do you. So being patient with each other when we fall short. I was driving recently on a Saturday morning with my wife sitting next to me to a friend's funeral. We live on the north side of the city. The funeral was up in Butler, Pennsylvania. And like I think all of us on occasion do, we just kind of like think we can squeeze more things into a certain block of time than we actually could. And so I left no margins that morning, and I squeezed a bunch of things in. And it's an hour drive from our home to this funeral home in Butler, and I only allotted about 40 minutes. So I'm driving up 79 like a madman, and I get to this part of the North Hills past Wexford and Cranberry called Seven Fields, and I turn on 228, which connects 79 with Route 8. So I turn on 228 through this little community called Seven Fields, and there are 2 lanes. But I know that one of them, the one on the right, is about to end, and the one on the left is the lane that's going to continue. And there's a traffic light, and there's a long line of cars in the line that is supposed to continue, and no cars in the lane that ends at the traffic light. So I'm thinking, I have to go to a funeral. I don't want to be disrespectful and late, so I will just kind of very slowly the light is red, inch my way down the lane that ends, and then I will time it just perfectly. As soon as the light turns, have you ever done this? So I did that, and I'm trying to be I'm aware of the fact that these folks have been waiting their turn for a long time, but like what harm could I possibly do? I time it perfectly. I'm in motion going like maybe 10 miles an hour, the light turns green, and I just hit the gas pedal and I go on, and like nobody had to slow down. I didn't cut anybody off, I just cut in line. But I really pissed off the person who was in the first car. And she was she was approaching 80 years old with purple hair, a beautiful looking purple haired grandma driving a Subaru. And grandma was really mad at this. So grandma put her hands on the horn for 2 straight minutes while she tailed me. She tailed me with her hand on the horn for 2 solid minutes. Like I'm thinking, she's about to reach in the back and grab a shotgun. Like, grandma is mad. And so grandma's tailing me, hand on the horn, and then the worst thing in the world happened. The light turned red before I got to it, and I had to stop. So now grandma, what she does, she gets on the gravel next to me, lowers her window, and yells 3 times. My wife was sitting in the passenger seat. Yells 3 times, "You're an effing a-hole." And she repeats that 3 times, and my wife is nodding in agreement. So then the light turns green. Grandma speeds up in front of me, creates some dust on the gravel, and then slows down. You don't want to make Grandma mad. And then thankfully, a mile or 2 down the road, Grandma turns right, I go straight. I get to the funeral a few minutes late. The funeral is meaningful and sweet and good memories. After the service, I went up to greet my friend, the widow, wanting to just, to do what you're supposed to do. And then she, and I quote, said the following to me: "Saleem, when I'm around you, I feel the presence of Jesus," her words. To which my wife said, "That's not what Grandma just said." So I need mercy because occasionally there's a Jesus side to me. But more often than not, there's an effing a-hole side to me. And I need mercy. I cannot get so cocky and so pompous thinking that I am better than those who I look down my nose at. Because I need people to be patient with me when I screw up. And let's face it, all of us screw up. But I think those of us, I am part of a group that sometimes is a little bit more arrogant and pompous than I ought to be. And I confess that as a sin, and I confess that as a weakness. And therefore, I say, I need to love mercy because I need mercy. I need to act justly because it's the right thing to do, and there's a hungry and hurting world. I need to love mercy because it's the right thing to do, and I am a hungry person for mercy. And then finally, I need to walk humbly. Walk humbly, which means, for me, it means taking others a whole lot more seriously than I take myself. And nobody taught me more about walking humbly than a deacon in a Baptist church just down the street from here in Homewood. His name is Deacon Jenkins. So for years, before running the Pittsburgh Promise, which I've had the joy of doing for the last 8 years, before that, for 23 years, I worked with kids on the north side and led an agency called the Pittsburgh Project. So, and at the Pittsburgh Project, we fix houses for seniors, and we involve young people in volunteer service. And every year, we fix about 200 houses, and 3,000 or so young people volunteer with us in providing free home repairs. Then in the summer months, we do that very intensively. And then every Wednesday night of the summer, we invite all the kids who are volunteering and serving and all of the seniors on whose homes we're working to have a meal together on Wednesday night. And we throw a big party and bring out the linens and our best food. And we just kind of like do it upright on Wednesday nights for our seniors and for our kids. And then we have a band. I play the guitar. We have a band, we do a little bit of entertaining, and then I get up and just say a few words. That was kind of like, that's our routine. So one of those Wednesday nights, one of our kids, one of our high school kids, grabs me by the hand and takes me to meet the homeowner on whose house they were working that day, to meet Deacon Jenkins. I'd never met Deacon before. I don't know his first name. I just know him as Deacon Jenkins. He died a couple years ago. Some stories, I do enough public speaking, and I know lots of we all lie. When we tell stories, we embellish them. We do. This is not embellished. This is like verbatim as it happened. All right, so I went up to meet Deacon, greeted him, told him how delighted I was to meet him, and he told me how happy he is with the kids and the work they're doing at his house, and how glad he was there to join us for the evening meal. And I said, Deacon, in a little bit we're going to go upstairs. Are you able to stay for the program? He said, I am. What's the program? I said, we have a band, we're going to sing. And Deacon interrupted me. He said, I can sing. I said, Deacon, would you like to sing when we go upstairs? He said, I insist. And Deacon told me he was somewhere between 87 and 78. He wasn't sure, he lost track. So we went upstairs, and the room is filled like this with young people. And I say, listen, ladies and gentlemen, Deacon Jenkins is here, and Deacon can sing. Would you all like to hear Deacon sing? What do you think the crowd did? Woo! That's embarrassing. They hooped, they hollered, they clapped, they stomped their feet, they whistled. Can you just take me back there for a moment? Ladies and gentlemen. Much more like it. So now Deacon is coming up the steps. There were 3 steps. He was walking with a cane. Deacon is very short. He was about 5 feet tall, but he had a goatee that was about 5 feet long. So I helped Deacon up the steps with his cane, and as Deacon was approaching me to get up to the microphone, he said to me, I'd like you to accompany me on your guitar. I said, Deacon, what are you going to sing? He said, I don't know. We'll see what comes out of my mouth. So I grabbed my guitar. And Deacon started singing, and thankfully he sang a song that was quite familiar. An old gospel spiritual called He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. Have we all heard it? Okay. And then as soon as Deacon started singing, we all discovered that Deacon could not sing. And Deacon started with just like the very, very kind of basic, familiar verses that went something like this. If you know them and you're comfortable, you're welcome to join. So this is how it happened. Deacon started singing, He's got the whole world in His hands. He's got the whole wide world in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. Tiny little baby. He's got the tiny little baby in His hands. He's got the tiny little baby in His hands. He's got the tiny little baby in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. You and me, brother. He's got you and me, brother. In His sister. Got you and me, sister. In His hands, neighbor. You and me, neighbor. In His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. That was pretty good. Then Deacon started making up his own verses. He had a creative morning at night. And he started making up his own verses. And here are the next three verses that Deacon wrote extemporaneously on the spot, right there and then. He was flowing. So Deacon, his fourth verse. He's got the drunken women in His hands. He's got the drunken women. No, he's singing. His hands. He's got the drunken women in His hands. He's got the whole world in it. It gets better. He's got the short-skirted women in His hands. He's got the short-skirted women in His hands. He's got the short-skirted women in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. Now, the grand finale, as it happened, live, unedited, uncensored, that night, on the north side, presented by Deacon Jenkins himself. He's got the pimps and the whores in His hands. He's got the pimps. I can't hear you. In His hands. He's got the pimps and the whores in His hands. He's got the whole world in His hands. And then after he finished, half the crowd was going, woohoo! Pimps and whores, baby! The other half was going, what did he just say? So, walk humbly. After Deacon finished, I had the responsibility of wrapping things up. And I sat, not knowing what to say. I said, I wonder if Deacon knows something that the rest of us need to know. I wonder if Deacon has come into some illumination, into some understanding, some appreciation that many of us miss, because we tend to kind of categorize, not necessarily meaning to, but we tend to kind of have hierarchies of importance. And some are just kind of more important. Walking humbly recognizes that none are more important and none are less. So I finally said, and using kind of Deacon's vernacular, I said, if God don't got the drunken women, the short-skirted women, the pimps and the whores in His hands, then maybe God don't got the tiny little baby, and not you, brother, and not you, sister, and not you, neighbor. He's either got the whole world or none of it. So walking humbly, regardless of your religious views, whether you have them or not, walking humbly, for me, is about recognizing that it's all very flat. The world is very flat. And regardless of who my neighbor is and who the person across the street is, and regardless of whether it's a short-skirted or a long-skirted person, they are my brothers and they are my sisters. So at the end of the day, for me, it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships, and it requires of me that I make justice a priority and struggle with my own hypocrisy when it comes to justice. Make justice a priority and act justly. Make mercy a priority because, gosh, I need it, and therefore I shouldn't be stingy in giving it. And then finally, walk humbly. recognizing that there isn't a person who's worse nor better, but they're all my family. Thank you all so very much for letting me do this.